This is another episode of our Stocks to Watch series from Global One Media, with me, Munir Barazi, your business analyst and host. Today, I'm speaking with Chris Frostad, the co-founder, president, and CEO of Purepoint Uranium, to learn more about the expansion of their Tabbernor Project in the prolific Athabasca Basin in Canada. The company is listed on the TSX Venture Exchange as PTU and on the OTCQB as PTUUF. Chris, welcome.
Good morning, Munir. Good to see you again.
Good morning. Let's jump right into it. Exciting news coming in from Purepoint. You've recently announced the addition of approximately more than 8,800 hectares to your Tabbernor project, following an airborne Mobile MagnetoTellurics survey. Before delving into the details, could you tell us a bit about the project and what makes it so attractive?
Okay. Well, Tabbernor is one of our earlier stage projects, and it was something we started staking into a few years back. And as background, the Tabbernor fault system, as it's known, actually begins in South Dakota, and it travels straight up north about 1,500 kilometers, or nearly 1,000 miles. And it's actually associated with over 80 historic mines, that particular fault system. And as it heads north, it goes right through eastern Saskatchewan and the eastern part of the Athabasca Basin, and is also aligned with 8 of the largest uranium mines in Saskatchewan, if not the world. So what we have is there's a natural fabric to the basin. If you look at maps and you see where the mines are, and it has this, lower left to upper right sort of fabric to it. And the Tabbernor system runs straight up through it, and so it's been somewhat associated with one of the control functions of how things would have been deposited. Having said that, what we have also learned in the last 10 years or so is that these large uranium deposits aren't restricted right to the boundaries of the Athabasca Basin. The basin used to be bigger. It just got scraped off by the glaciers way back when. So some of the bigger deposits and discoveries of the last 10 years have been found just slightly outside of the basin. Having said all that, what we did is went out and we staked columns of property just south of the basin, but aligned with all of these major deposits to see whether there was some sort of targets and opportunities we could find there. We did an airborne survey at that time over top to see if we could find what we look for as normal targets, and we did in fact find 3 of them. But one primary target area, it's graphite in the basement rock, cut right through the center of all 3 of those projects. So we immediately went out and staked the rest of it that we could see was in between them. And to your point, this last fall, we went out and did another airborne survey. This one is MagnetoTellurics. It's just a different form of geophysical survey that we use to identify targets, so that we could cover the entire target area that we'd staked again. And of course, from that, we identified that it continued on even further, and we started to see larger anomalies off to the east. So before we announced any of the work we'd done, we scampered out into the woods and staked up more property, and that's pretty much turned this into one of the largest landholding projects that we have right now. But now we actually hold the entire 50-kilometer length of target area. So at the same time, we did go out and did do a few kilometers of surface soil geophysics sampling, and all of those results are now coming in. What we announced was the addition of our land to the package, and over the next month or so, we'll be getting the final interpretations from that airborne survey and the assays from the samples we've taken. So that's Tabbernor and why we're there and why we're getting pretty excited about it.
That's a really good place to operate in, and you're trying to cover as much of the potential as possible. Could you perhaps elaborate more on those results and on whether they were in line with your initial expectations?
Well, yeah, we did find the target area we're looking for. I mean, what it allows us to do is reduce our land package in other areas where we didn't find things that were interesting. And I mean, that's part of the game here is because it costs us to hold land. We have to work this land in order to hold it. And the quicker and more effectively you can reduce that down to the very precise targets you're looking for, the better. So in this case, yes, to find the targets we did aligned with the fault system that we believe is part of the control system out there, was perfect in our mind, and it allowed us to make sure that we were able to acquire the entire target area. And it will, and we've also known from other drilling that's actually going on in the area that there is uranium mineralization in the region. So all the clues are coming together that would say that we're in a pretty prospective area. And we'll continue to narrow that down to a point where we will put a drill out there and efficiently really test these targets.
It seems so indeed. So let's look into the future. What are your next steps on this project, and what will you focus on in your exploration efforts? We were talking earlier, and you mentioned that your exploration can be more effective in the winter. Perhaps you can even talk a bit more about that.
Well, it's what we would do next. Again, was once we get the interpretations, the assays, we will take an even finer look at those target areas and determine whether we need to do any more preliminary work before we take a drill out. Drilling is the most expensive aspect of this process, so you want to make sure that you've refined your targets down as much as possible before you do that. Yes, as I mentioned, the winter is the best time for us drilling out there because we can drag things over the frozen snow and the frozen lakes and rivers and streams and things. So it makes it easier to work out there. It does get pretty cold, but it doesn't require a helicopter to get around, which will double our costs. So what we hope to see happening with Tabbernor over the coming months is that we have that entire package refined down to specific drill areas, and then it really becomes part of our pipeline of properties that we can start to prioritize. I mean, we plan on drilling. We'll be commencing drilling on at least 4 of our projects in the coming year, and it's exploration. So if we come up short on one of those projects, we have more to do, and that's really what we want to ensure is that we've got an ongoing pipeline of prospective projects that we can be drilling. And in order to identify that next big deposit.
Wonderful. And what challenges are you currently facing in this project, and how are you addressing them?
Well, this project in particular doesn't have a whole lot of challenges because of where it is. It's easily accessible. It's literally right off a major. I don't want to call it a highway, but there's a major route up to the north that goes right by it. So it's easily accessible, which makes it easy to work, to get in and out of. It makes it easier for service providers for drilling. So it's a very good project from an operational standpoint. We have other projects where it's a little more difficult to get to. It's a little more isolated and off in the middle of nowhere. But you got to go where you think the uranium is. So we have all flavors of projects going on out there. This one is like I say, it's easily accessible, and it's a well-known area. So we're not anticipating any problems continuing our advancement of it.
Sounds very encouraging. My last question. Having identified those targets now, what excites you the most about all of this, and what does this mean for PTU's shareholders? Why is now the right time to consider PTU as a stock to watch?
Yeah, I think what's happening now is because we are seeing excitement in the uranium market. We're seeing a lot of money coming into the uranium market. It's as I mentioned before, it's a small market. There's really only maybe a dozen of us out there looking, and there's a big demand gap coming at us that the world is kind of looking to us to fill in the future. So it's important that we find more uranium and find significant deposits of uranium. And so over the next year or so, I think you're going to see a lot of money coming into, in particular in Canada, which has far larger opportunities than a lot of other jurisdictions. And And through that, if we're putting money in the ground, then the opportunity of finding something becomes greater. You have to poke a hole in the ground before you're going to find anything, and the more money that's available to do that, then the greater the odds of finding it. So as we see that support and that capital coming into what we do, it allows us to get out there and drill more aggressively on what we think is one of the most prospective portfolios of projects in the basin right now. So we keep that pipeline full, we keep the money rolling, and we keep the drills turning. And it's anybody's game moving forward.
Very good. And the overall trend seems to be that the EU, Europe, and North America seems to be moving towards relying more on nuclear energy. So I think that is also a positive factor, indeed.
Definitely, it's a big factor. I mean, there's, and we've talked about it before. There's been the supply issues because the price of uranium's been depressed. People have not been producing uranium. They haven't been mining it. They haven't been developing opportunities, and they haven't been putting money into exploration. So obviously the supply side is down. But to your point, the world is really waking up to the opportunity of utilizing and leaning heavily on nuclear power as a source of green energy, and that opening up of demand is certainly creating an opportunity for all of us in this space.
Indeed. Chris Frostad, the CEO and president of Purepoint Uranium, thank you so much for sharing those updates. We look forward to hearing more positive news from Purepoint very soon.
Thanks a lot, Munir.